wildly atypical for the hall of arts. And so one runs the risk of using something like that, as you say, softening it. Some would say then what you've done is distorted.
I'm not saying soften the material, but soften people to the material. My students were hard audience for it, and to get them to open up and to have some human empathy for what happened. The fact that they could so callously dismiss it was my issue with them.
And it taps into, I mean, this is the other thing that fascinates me about the arts. Raina and I have been doing a lot of work on arts integration, and there's more and more research about what happens to the brain when you are experiencing music, when you are experiencing the arts, when you physicalize something, what happens, to your body, and there's that vicarious sort of joint venture thing that happens audience to spectator. And I think something does happen, that you can reach at maybe a different level. I think it's important to preface, to be certain that context is provided for the material. And I saw what happened with the Honors Colloquium too. We dealt with some really difficult footage, Nordhausen, and I'm not sure if I had showed that at the beginning of the course, the students would have had the same understanding, connection, willingness to look at it both intellectually and emotionally. And that's just the way I teach, that's what I believe in, that learning is a combination of cognition and affect, and that will move us further ahead to not repeat. That's the other thing for me, is this notion of never again. And it's going on all over the world still. And how do we stop the transgressions? I think we have to think about them in order to stop them. And we see art as a vehicle to present some questions, perhaps not the answers.
Well, and this particular play is very, very specific to the artists of Terezin and the resilience that they showed in those circumstances. And I don't know if people might say that that's softening it, mm-hmm. but everything that I've seen, all the stuff that you've looked at, interviews and research, everybody keeps coming back to those who were there, whether you were an audience member or a participant. It was survival. Alice Summers says she's the oldest living survivor. Mm-hmm. She says in an interview that music was God. It transported them outside of the ghetto. And
that term itself really fascinated me, that she said it transported us, because the whole notion of the word transport in the ghetto was one that, what's the power of the word to generate fear? But she was saying it transported them beyond. But, I was sharing with Raina, I've been, by virtue of being in Washington, I have the opportunity to interact with a lot of scholars at the Holocaust Museum. And I understand that there are differing perspectives on all of this. Recently we had a lecture presented to my cast where one of the postdoc fellows was talking about arts at Terezin were really, in its own sort of form, an elitist culture, because you took all of these extraordinary artists who then are there together practicing art, and only some people could get to the performances. And that's, that's another dimension. The thing that I suppose would be my ultimate reply is that what do we risk if we don't do this? When I'm working on a play with students, I say, what if? One of my favorite plays is Antigone. What if Creon had been willing to compromise? What if Antigone had been willing to compromise? And so I keep thinking about what if I didn't do some of this? What if Raina didn't take it on and risk the challenge of presentation?
I remember when Schindler's List came out, and they showed it in Miami to high school students. And when the Jews were being carted off and treated badly and everything, the kids in the audience cheered. What? They cheered. And that's what I think validates what you were trying to do. Somehow you've got to present these things in a way that these kids can relate to it. Otherwise, you're going to have it happening again, like the man who stomped on the head of the protester at the Rand Paul rally. How else are you going to recognize the signs of it starting again if you can't get them to relate to what happened in the past? I was so appalled when that happened, I didn't know what to do. I was ready to go to Canada.
Well, and that's sometimes how we feel, I think, in our lives as artists. Okay, so we don't know what to do to reckon, so what do? We generate art to challenge all of us to consider the possibilities for reckoning. I don't know what my next play will be to direct after all of this. I don't know.
I wonder about communication. I watch some of my grandchildren and their methods of communication to computer and Facebook and these instant messages. And I worry about them losing the written word and diaries and journals and letters and things that we've used to continue understanding the realities of what happened. I just kind of wonder where that's going to all go.
That's funny, and too, you just said that I hadn't thought about it. Several of the cast members at the university, and I have a very young cast, because we had two other productions that preface the one that I'm doing. So 2/3 of my cast are 17, 18, and 19, and several of them said, I've started to write poetry. I had not thought about the power of poetry because they've now read all the poems in the anthology. I thought that was interesting. And some of the poems are rugged. I mean, if you look at those poems, there are several that are really rugged, not easy to deal with in terms of the content, to deal with fear, to deal with the lack of hygiene in Terezin, the fact that the children were assaulted with images of death and death in front of them all the time. Did you get a copy of Incarcerated Dreams? There's a film that was done, the academy where I taught at in Prague has a film school, a theater school, and a music school. And the film school is quite extraordinary, quite amazing. I actually taught in the film school working with film directors and how to work with actors. And they did a film that's shown at the Terezin Memorial Museum sometimes, not all the time, called Incarcerated Dreams. It's quite amazing. Shows the drawings of the children, and it's basically all nonverbal. And you just see the images with some underscoring. And every time I watch it, I kind of hear the poetry with the visualizations. It's an interesting one. I'll have to...
I couldn't find it available.
Yeah, I'll be sure that you get a copy because it's very powerful, and it's one that you might want to have as the project continues here, which I'm sure it will.
Nothing I want to ask about was funding also.
The challenge of trying to reach the young people has to do with limited to their realities. And I wonder if you could start it by having them look at current realities of bullying. And how bullying as a process begins to emerge and evolve into something larger and larger. And you can see the elements of bullying if you look at the history of what happened in Germany, and as that built into the Holocaust. If you start at that point, then they can see what the realities are and they can just make those connections.
That's on the nose. The fourth grade class that we worked with, we had Q&A afterwards, and a couple said, why didn't they fight back? When someone punches me on the playground, I punch them back. And so, it can open up some dialogue to really discuss the circumstances and human behavior. And
why did the Jews fight back?
Yeah.
Funding. Did you get funding for any projects down the arts or?
Are you talking to her?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
I also teach in our graduate program in arts administration at AU, and I'm very much into multiple funding sources to make anything happen. And so, yes, we had multiple funding sources. We had a few private donors, the Jewish Studies program on campus, the Embassy of the Czech Republic. I mean, we just had so many partners to make that project happen. And again, I'm fortunate to be in Washington, but I'm also, I'm just willing to knock on a lot of doors if I believe strongly in a project.
And we have funding from the endowment fund for the Holocaust education. And Dr. Peschel, who's going to be here Thursday and Friday, is also partially funded from the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum. She's a former fellow there, and it's a lecture series program that the museum does throughout the country when they can.
And it's interesting too if you start to put it out there. We had an anonymous donor come forward through the Jewish Studies program at American who funded both Kate Eliash and the daughter to come to be with us when we did the project, because the daughter Dorothy actually did the translation of Smoke of Home into English. And so it was great to have them there and to have them speak and interact with individuals. And
they'll be here too.
And they're coming tomorrow, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So after the show here.
After the show, it'll be Dr. Peschel and Kate, the wife, tomorrow, and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, it'll be Kate and Dorothy together.
And actually, after tomorrow's performance, tomorrow night?
Tonight, it's Dr. Mardirosian and Dr. David Dorff, and then tomorrow is Dr. Peschel and Kate Eliash.
And I think it would be interesting to hear Lisa's response to that question too, because I think she has a particular perspective, having done so much research on the theater at Terezin. When it comes right down to it, it becomes a matter of your personal choices, your obligation that you feel as an artist, as a teacher. And I guess that's it.